Well, there's got to be some self-reflection in this life too, right? Because I guess there's a fine line between I really do enjoy what I'm doing and feel like I can still bring value there, and boy, I am very fearful of letting go of this identity that I've built up for a long time, that they don't quite understand who they are outside of work. They've built themselves up to be defined by their work. They are what they do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That if you haven't unpacked and self-reflected to the point that you understand who you are, outside of work, that who you are is not what you do.
Right.
It's really hard to let go.
It is.
of work. And so I think that's where I've found that challenge a little bit with these people is like, well, why are you really hanging on?
Yeah. Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where happiness is more often found in the soul of someone's wealth rather than the size of it. Money, after all, is a tool. It's not the destination. Money is the fuel to advance your core values and your purpose. Join us as we share some inspiring stories, true wealth life lessons, and practical strategies to help you design a life of intention, generosity, and fulfillment. Welcome back to another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Again, in the studios, I have co-hosts Nik Aamlid, Ryan Ovenden. Guys, thanks again for joining us. This is always a lot of fun as we go through the different life stages. It's a neat way for us to set aside from our normal focus of working on, other relationships, financial plans, and financial lives, to just talk through war stories, maybe, if that's the right.
Yeah.
And how the battle is being won. But so the leaper stage, age 60 to 75, 75-ish. It's a period of transition, reinvention, purpose beyond work. I think that's kind of a hard thing for a lot of people. The leaper stage is a profound season of transition, from building to becoming, from accumulation to alignment, from career identity to life identity. It's a moment of reflection and anticipation. Many begin asking deeper question, what matters now? Or, now what? What do I want the next decade to represent? Who am I when the role changes? In this stage, true wealth becomes less about achievement and far more about meaning, relationships, health, time, and contribution. Leapers redefine success. They prioritize commitments. They explore purpose beyond professional accomplishments. And when embraced with clarity, this stage becomes one of the most rewarding chapters of life, filled with renewed purpose, emerging wisdom, and deeper alignment with the life they meant to live. Now, I'm laughing because I'm right in the middle of this. I'm thinking, I wrote this? Whoa.
You're like, somebody's experiencing this.
Was this hopeful
I want to talk
thinking?
to them.
I think that was hopeful, wishful thinking maybe. But yeah, off camera, I just talked a little bit about that. So, you plan for that period of time. And, I remember thinking, when 60 comes, that'll be another stage. And I'm over halfway through that decade. And it's like, where did that go? It is an exciting time, but it's always, it can be a moment that if you don't set aside with all right, what is my next phase? You can bury yourself, and before you know it, you're halfway through kind of that retirement stage. But when you're having fun, so I don't think you quit just because of an age. If you love what you're doing, I'm convincing myself of this now.
Yeah. Well, we listened to John C. Maxwell. He was in town for an event that we got to go to recently, and he talked about that, where someone kept asking him, well, when are you going to retire? And their definition of retirement was, doing stuff that gives you joy and brings you life and those things. And he goes, well, then I am.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing that says you have to retire away from earning income doing things you love and just serve on boards all day, every day.
Well, I have a lot of classmates who have retired.
Yeah.
And there are times where you go, what am I doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And which is a guilt kind of thing you put on yourself. But I sit there and go, what am I doing right? Because I really love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Amen. I also realize, I don't have quite the energy that I used to. There are times where you have to realize it's a younger person's. So I'm really figuring out and getting closer to which has always been one of my philosophies. You need to retire to something, not from something.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of hobbies. I mean, I don't, woodworking, my brother got that gift. My dad passed to him. It missed me totally. I don't, yeah, I'm not a puzzle person. I'm not I like to fish, but I'm not a every weekend, I'm a fair weather fisher person. I got to be out. Yeah, I can find a lot of reasons not to go out because I just don't want rejection.
Yeah.
I can handle rejection from people, but if the fish are even out there, not today, buddy. It's like, I don't know if I can do this all day. My dad was fisher bonus, and he would sit out there all day if he could because he just enjoyed creation. And I can do that in a boat, but I can do that on the shore as well. So, but that's a difficult. This is an interesting period of life.
Well, there's got to be some self-reflection in this life too, right? Because I guess there's a fine line between I really do enjoy what I'm doing and feel like I can still bring value there, and boy, I am very fearful of letting go of this identity that I've built up for a long time, that they don't quite understand who they are outside of work. They've built themselves up to be defined by their work. They are what they do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That if you haven't unpacked and self-reflected to the point that you understand who you are, outside of work, that who you are is not what you do.
Right.
It's really hard to let go.
It is
of work. And so I think that's where I've found that challenge a little bit with these people is like, well, why are you really hanging on?
Yeah.
What's the root issue? Because until you define the root issue, it's really hard to help guide.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why, my retire too is I want to do more teaching. Going back to how I started in the business, I want to do more couples retreats, more writing. The podcast was really kind of born out of I need
living it.
I need
You're living it.
Right.
No, it's a little more than that because I think there's lots to still be shared. But it's I'm not really worried financially. I will say one of the tougher things for me at this point was, I went through a point early in my life where, basically lost a clothing store because of interest rates got out of whack. Took me a long time to pay off that debt because I was not going to declare bankruptcy. And you guys have heard this story before, but so I got started a little bit later financially, but I have been blessed, and I could retire financially, but there's also I'm at this little bit of not that I want to admit I'm sloppy, but I kind of like this comfort level.
Yeah.
And I'm having to work through that. So the thought of going back on a more structured payment, income type of a thing, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
So I needed to, well, and also from a retirement standpoint, my wife hears this, she may not appreciate it, but I was not that long ago, somebody said, "You still working?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to retire." And her immediate response was, "Not soon, right?" So it's like, yeah. And I know I've shared this, it may have even been in an earlier episode, but I live really close to the office. So I have this vision of her wheeling me across the parking lot. I changed him, he's fed, you guys have him till 4. And she just smiles when I say that. And some of our ops team just smiles. I think that's my plan. I think I'm just going to be drooling at my desk somewhere else. But I also, there was an older attorney when I lived in Rock Valley who he was 90 he walked close to a mile from his house to the office every day. And his dad was always humored by that because he would tell the story. It was like, I wish my dad would retire because I want to retire, but I'm not going to retire before my dad retires. And he just walks to the office and falls asleep. But he still enjoyed that identity, and it wasn't that he needed to do that. He just and I think for me, the one fear is relationships. Not my wife's. I mean, we're great together. We go to the cabin. We have a good time. I want to be more impactful with my kids and grandkids. And again, I should have been. That's something. Shouldn't wait to do. I need to be doing that longer, but time is a little bit of an element there. So, but really missing just all the people that I've worked with all the years. So, that's fun, and they're like family. So it's kind of hard to say, yeah, I need to walk away from that. I'm not ready to do that yet, but I do think there comes a point to be responsible that I need to make sure all the relationships who are more closely tied to me are realigned with other advisors, so that if I don't make it to work someday, all of a sudden they're not, I hopefully we haven't done that they've hung their confidence and faith in me as opposed to the process.
Yep.
So if we've done our job right, they're going to be fine whether I'm here or not, probably even better. But I think that's something you have to work through.
Well, I think the whole idea of this retire to something, not from something, I think people look at that and go, well, I still have to go somewhere. And you mentioned I don't have a lot of hobbies or whatever it is, but I think I've had a ton of people who they can't wait to retirement. They got to leave their job. They just need to be done. And they finally do it. They retire, and within 3 months, they come back in the office. They're like, "Well, I'm working again." Like, why? I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
But they go back and they bring a new energy, and they bring a new mindset. And it's this, we talked about it a little bit last episode, that it's this, I don't have to be here, I get to be here.
Right.
And then that impacts everybody around them.
It does.
I've talked to so many people who have someone who's been around a long time at the office that they couldn't imagine working without, because they've just brought it. They bring a joy, they bring a perspective that everybody around them doesn't see. So maybe they're retiring to something isn't necessarily something physical. It's a mindset.
Absolutely.
It's an emotional thing,
100%.
a spiritual thing.
Yep.
And I think people don't process it that way.
Yep.
Well, I think that the word you used in the introduction, transition, I think you must have said it 2 or 3 times. That's such an appropriate word to use. I once heard a pastor preach on this. Everyone likes change, but nobody likes transition. Transition is the between the A and B points, right? And I've got this picture in my mind. I don't get out very much. I've got 6 kids at home, and so the amount of times I've flown in the last 15 years, I can count it on 2 fingers. But I flew to a conference here in February, and I remember thinking when we landed, and I landed in Orlando, Florida, and in Sioux Falls, it was in the middle of a snowstorm, and I landed in Florida in 80-degree weather. And I remember thinking, I like change. Like, this is good change. But I didn't really like the transition period over the entire course of the day that started at 4 a.m. to try to get me through customs and all that kind of stuff, and get me onto the plane in time, and then layovers and all that kind of stuff, dealing with kids coughing right in your face in the airport. And
that could have been your problem, as you tried to go through customs to get to Florida.
That might be one of my problems. They were like, "You're not even,
sir.
Here. Let us help you. We will walk you to the gate."
So funny.
You see that number up there? But yeah, so I have a lot of other problems.
I like the fact that you brought in the airplane, because each stage, I tried to find a name that I felt resonated with what that stage portrays. I could have called them steppers, because you really could be stepping into retirement. Leaping, I think, is a little bit more appropriate, because there is an element of anticipation, anxiety, fear, excitement, a next stage, something you've worked towards. So a leap has that. Now, I've often equated it, for a lot of people, parachuting. Okay. Nobody hops on a plane and they're going along life, and then they open the door and say, "There you go, it's time, get out." That would have all kinds of fear, right? Especially for me, because I'm terribly afraid of heights. But people who parachute, the reason they're comfortable doing it is because they've spent time packing their chute, learning how it works. They know there's a backup plan and a backup chute if something isn't going right. They have planned this out. The door opens, and there is a little bit of, anxiety, but there's also more of an anticipatory and excitement. And when they actually make the leap, every one of them tells me how surreal and peaceful and calm and beautiful it is. They can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I like that analogy or framework for this. I think it is a really rewarding and fulfilling period of time. Identity is a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, I remember a story of a doctor who was well respected. I think he was a surgeon of some. Yeah, he was a surgeon, I believe, and he retired. And the hardest thing he had was he was now known as, "Honey, would you take out the garbage?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I had a hard time with that. I had a huge staff that worked for me that jumped at every command and all these things, and now I'm resorted to taking out the garbage." And he had gone to the pharmacy just because he liked to be around medicine, I guess. And a younger person came up and said, "Are you Dr. So-and-so?" And he said, "Yes, I am." "Well, you used to be my doctor." And when the person left, the story goes, he turns to his wife and says, "I still am." Now, he's not practicing anymore, but he had a hard time saying, I still care for you the same way that I did at that point in time. So your identity changes. That's one of the more difficult ones for me as well. That I'm not wrestling with, but I have to process. And but it's not a downer time. It shouldn't be.
Are there tools or conversations or things that you have walked through with people that you feel like have helped? You know, I guess this whole idea popped in my head of finishing well, and I think some people look at that as finishing life well,
Right?
And that's certainly an aspect of it. But I think finishing your career well and transitioning well, you know, what are some things?
One of the things that
you've
I always
seen?
found valuable, and I haven't done this myself. I have other people do this. Matter of fact, I'm going to do this, and I need to really.
We need to write this down for accountability. Or what is
This will be aired. It's my accountability.
I'm noting it.
One of my accountability episodes. One, I really haven't sat down with my wife and said, "So, what does retirement look like for you?" I think she's waiting for that, and she's saying, "Well, I hope it's not picking up after you sitting downstairs watching TV, because that would not be rewarding for her either."
Sure.
So I have to have that conversation. But
So getting on the same page.
Getting on the same page,
spouses
and
on
just-
the same page.
I've often said to people, write down what the first week looks like after you've gone through this vacation period, because that's what some people will tell me. Well, then once the vacation got over, and then I realized this is permanent, what does 8 to 5 look like? And just have them try to visualize and write that down. The people who are the most fulfilling can do that. They say, "Yeah, this is what I plan on doing. I want to volunteer. I want to take a mission trip." I don't think life was really meant, because retirement really is not a biblical principle.
Right.
The only place it is found is for the Levites, who were instructed to retire. I think it even says at age 55. Others are designed to take their talents and redeploy them to the next generation as a mentor or a teacher. So I think that's really where we are missing it. I don't believe one of the speakers we're going to have at our event in October talks about this, that life was designed for you to climb behind and watch your stomach expand behind the steering wheel of an RV. I don't know if that's what retirement really should be like. I have watched people do that, where they go south and they enjoy the weather and they do that. But when you hear what they're doing down there, it isn't like they're sunbathing all day. They're very active in doing other things. So it's that activity that they have a new refound or rediscovered purpose.
The one I think and you just hit it there. I think the people that I have seen struggle lack community.
Absolutely.
Like, we were built for a relationship, and I think the ones that struggle are the ones that, well, I get up and I turn on the TV and I sit in my chair, and I get up when I'm hungry and I go back to my chair, and there's no real there's no real purpose or activity or community. I think the ones that I find are the most joyful are the ones that are up and at them, and they're at their coffee group, and then they're going and playing pickleball, and then they're on the golf course, or they're going to volunteer at this organization, and then they're having lunch with this group, and they're going over here to volunteer in the afternoon. They get up with purpose.
Well, we talk about one of the pillars is being emotionally engaged. You're spiritually nourished, you're financially confident, you're physically fit, you're emotionally engaged. And I think that's what happens is for some people, they lose that engagement. I think that's kind of what I said earlier about my struggle is I don't want to miss the relationships.
Yeah.
I have to replace them. So I have a struggle with, because so many of my friends are actually the clients I work with. I mean,
Sure.
I don't have this separate friend group necessarily, but I just have this issue with when I go out for breakfast on Saturday morning and I see all these couples maybe or a men's group of 10, 15 men having coffee. I'm like, how do I go into that group and say, hey guys,
Yeah, right.
you got a room here? I need to find that community. And I think that's
Not yet. Check the obituary.
Yeah.
That's the new admission.
Nope, chairs are all full. Sorry. And I know that's not what would happen, but that's what does this next phase look like?
Yeah.
That's kind of
That's where I think building community has to start early, and I think so many people, their entire community is wrapped up in work. Like it's just, you spend so much time at work. And I think that's where there's value in, and even, we've talked about that here, encouraging people to like find a place if you want to volunteer and do those things, and you got to find community outside of work. And for a lot of people that you don't have to look any further than your family, but how are you intentionally investing in family, and what does that look like, and friendships?
I know Ryan's asked me this one other time, but I struggled with the question, and I still kind of do, but I guess I'll bring it up as part of my therapy here today. What would I tell myself if I could go back and see myself 20 years ago, what would I be telling that person? And it probably would have been to incorporate more of, I enjoyed life, so that wasn't it, but having a setting aside time away from work. I poured so much of my energy into work, and I still love it. I use the analogy often. I have 4 boys. I didn't have any daughters, but my job was kind of my little baby girl. And I watched her stumble, I watched her crawl, watched her fall a few times, and now she's gotten to be a really beautiful young woman, and I'm kind of don't really want to let her go. And that is the next stage or phase that I have to go through. So I'll unpack that a little bit further too. But yeah, I would go back to myself then and say, make sure you're setting aside time to divest yourself from work. Don't and even give yourself the freedom to be able to stop and just spend some things. Don't wait to retirement to do some of those things. And we did a lot of those things as well, but I would want to be more intentional at that time. And like trial runs, so to speak, as far as the retirement would be. And I also would go back and say, enjoy life. I can't get over the brevity of life. And I was going to share this probably a little bit. I'll unpack it with a 76 plus. I've got songs are always important to me. In the book I talk about love, and there's all kinds of songs about love. But there's a couple of good ones about life, how fast it is. The one, I guess I'll talk about this one, but I'll share the other one when we get to the episode. So listeners, you got to come back because it is a great song.
Are you going to sing it?
But I don't know if I'll sing. I may sing the chorus.
Come on.
We may sing the chorus. But, one of my favorite songs now, Chesney has one, Don't Blink.
Yeah.
That to me is really, life is just on a sprint. And I think making sure you don't get so busy looking to the 60s and what that may do for you that you miss the 50s and the 40s. And
right.
And actually, I think Chesney he's got a couple songs, so he must have been struggling with this to life, because they always say songwriters write about things that are. Don't Blink was his other one, and I think the one he wrote in 2003, I believe, was There Goes My Life. I think that was another one he had. Tim McGraw has, his is Live Like You Were Dying. And I think that is something I would have gone back to myself and said, because I think, it's always important to live life to its fullest. But if you really lived every day as though it was your last, it would really be a lot more fulfilling and more full.
Yeah.
and more rewarding because you would cherish and embrace every moment of every day. So those are my songs for this group. The next one I'll start. I can't get the melody out of my head, so I'll have to probably.
Now you got it in mind too. Thanks.
I'll sing it a little bit more when we get there. But
I was going to say, I like what Nick said about community there, and one of the things we talk about a lot at Pinnacle Wealth is that money is a tool, not a destination. And I think it's important to remember that when you're in your 60s, 70s, money is still a tool. You might have more tools in your toolbox than you did when you were in your 30s,
right.
But you can still utilize that tool in unique ways to develop community before you fully transition into whatever retirement looks like. And some of the people I've seen that have done what I would consider the greatest job, I mean, just people that I go, I want to be like them when I grow up, are people that are intentionally using that tool to develop community, whether it's redeveloping community with family. If you feel like you've blown it when you were in your 30s and 40s and worked too hard and never was around, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Use the tools that you've built. You might have more tools than the guy who didn't work as hard as you when he was in his 30s and 40s, but use your tools to develop community now. One of my favorite stories is a client who they decided, hey, we're going to start investing in family time every summer. We're going to take the same week or 2 weeks every summer.
I've always done
we're
that.
yeah
That's
we're
awesome.
we're going to rent the hotel or whatever, and all of my kids and grandkids, you're welcome to come anytime or the whole time if you want to. Everything's paid except you got to pay for yourself to get there. You're intentionally saying, I'm going to use this money as a tool for something that is deeper than just the money side.
Yeah, I want to go back to, just so that everybody doesn't think I'm on this spending spree phase of life. Because the other thing that not that we struggled financially, but we always had homes for it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things I've really enjoyed about this phase right now is I am able to give more away. I think that's probably the other piece of the enjoyment side. It isn't that I'm spending it all on myself. There is additional that I'm able to sponsor passions or things that I maybe previously spent time doing but couldn't financially give or support in the same means. And that is really, really rewarding. That's very, very fulfilling. So that's also why that's not going to go away when I retire, but having that extra to be able to do those things is really important.
That's also where you get to this phase and you understand the true heart of people, because the ones that come in and want to make sure that giving is a continued part of their plan as they go into retirement, versus the ones that kind of say, well, I'm done with that because I already gave my percentage of all the money that's sitting in there, and so I don't have to do that anymore. And like giving just becomes a part of your soul and who you are, and there is a joy that comes in that. And that doesn't have to always be financially. Sometimes it is, and a lot of times it is, but you're also at a place where sometimes you hit this stage and your time is all of a sudden what you have to give. That for years you could give financially, and maybe that gets a little harder in retirement because now you got a fixed pool that you got to kind of start to live on. But how do you use your time that now you have?
Well, I have one couple that they've incorporated both, so they do go south. And they go for a fairly extended period of time. But when I ask them, so what is it you do down there? Oh, well, we work at a local thrift store or a local charity organization and helping them get their inventory organized. So they're down there, and they could do that here too, but they've incorporated, we want to have a little bit warmer weather and still do something we're passionate about. They also do that when they're here, when the sun is shining and the snow isn't out there. So they're doing both, but I think that's a great way to incorporate that in there as well.
Is this a stage you feel like where sometimes you ask people, well, how do you know when you've gotten there? Well, I don't know. It's just a feeling. I'm not sure what, I can't give you an answer.
My brother said that. He said, you'll know. He said, and he was one I thought would never, ever retire. He just, he liked what he was doing too. But he did get to a point where all of a sudden he just said, I'm retiring at that point. And my jaw dropped because it's like, really? He was still very, very active in this. And some of it was I think again the relationships change.
Sure.
So he was in his profession, dealt a lot with in construction, and so he was down. He always said there's a list of people that I can call if I need a favor done to be able to get a project completed, or they would call on me to do that. Well, now all of a sudden those people were in their 20s, and the people, his comrades, so to speak, they were all retiring, and it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And he also got to a point where he could see who was going to come behind him, and he felt really great leaving the company at that point. So, but he did. He's just said, "You'll know," and
Yeah.
I know that I don't know that yet. So, but I know it's coming closer. So I have the feeling that's there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just seeing. I guess the thing is, are all my ducks in a row? That's also something we go through. And I know I wanted to also incorporate. I think Ryan, you had this in question that you were going to formulate as well, but I watch a lot of people in retirement, and some do it really, really well, and some, they're struggling. And I think the difficult piece are those people who have told you, I can live on this, and then they get there and they don't live on that. They spend more than what they anticipated, or when you have a paycheck, you're required to make house payments and buy your shelter. You're paying for your house, or if you're renting, that all comes out of your paycheck. So in my mind is, when we say we're going to give you X amount, we're continuing that paycheck back. Well, now all of a sudden, that's my
living on that.
I'm living life on that. I'm not being prepared or setting aside out of that for these other. And then all of a sudden they come in and I need to get a new vehicle. Well, we were supposed to be setting money aside out of that. So making sure we have that conversation. Otherwise, those one-time expenses that come up every 6 months can shoot a hole in somebody's portfolio. The other one that I remember having this conversation, she was a pretty good saver and got to the point in retirement, and she was just spending way more than we had planned for. And I said, we got to talk about this. Well, you told me to enjoy life. And I said, yeah, but I can't. There is not an investment having a rate of return high enough that's going to allow me to keep up with your spending. So you got to, again, I guess, making sure the plan is right, that you've had those conversations. And it isn't, that's what I'm shooting for, and then you're not going to pay attention to that number. Yeah. So those are the ones that I see struggle a bit more. But it is an amazing period of time and can be impactful in so many different ways.
We talked about it being basically, it's a 15-year transition period, essentially. It's probably the biggest. I love the analogy of jumping out of a plane, because it probably can feel like that. I've walked through that with a number of clients where it feels like there's no return. Once you step out of the plane, you're not just going to crawl back onto the plane again. Now, you can go get a job again if you want to, but it can feel like once it's done, it's done. Like, I'm retiring, and this is a finality. There's a finality to it. But during that transition period, talk to us about the importance, because we talk a lot about the hard numbers conversation of what this looks like to transition and can I afford it, but it sounds like a lot of the deeper issues that people struggle with aren't necessarily the hard numbers. It's the softer issues, the community, the relationships. Talk to us about the importance of transitioning yourself through this process and dealing with some of those raw emotions and putting together a plan that's deeper than just numbers. And maybe even like the True Wealth the weekends and that sort of thing, because that's one of the things you're transitioning
to me is
to.
Important, because now it's going back to say you're trying to paint that picture. One of the things that we really want started, and I think that's why we're incorporating it now across all of the stages, because we're seeing the value of what is your statement of financial purpose. I think we're integrating that more and more in our process, just because we want to have people say, well, financially, why are you here? What is your life's calling? What do you want to be able to do? And I think that also isn't so much about, although we call it a statement of financial purpose, it is about alignment. So it's still going back and figuring out and having that conversation. What do you want to have happen? And what does that look like for you? So I think having that as an intentional conversation. But I do think I don't want to walk away from the numbers either, because part of that conversation is define what retirement's going to look like
Mm-hmm.
to me. Are you planning on you don't want to have to work? Do you have this community that you can belong to and be a part of? Because I have had people who retire and went back to work because they had to, just because the numbers they gave when we were planning weren't accurate. And although we thought we had a good plan, and they clearly were spending a lot more that was not being shared. So having that kind of an honest conversation. Now, in that case, they could have probably better stayed where they were 1 year longer than going and saying nothing against Walmart, but now they're working 80 hours at Walmart and the income is just not the same. And that can make up a lot of difference as far as the numbers go. But yeah, it has to be an intentional conversation of what's it going to look like? How is it going to feel? And just talking through that, because to leap out of the plane without packing that chute, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think the blueprinting guide helps walk people through that process too, and wrestle with some of those feelings that you have as you're going through this transition. So I would just encourage everybody, if you have not heard of the blueprinting process that Kevin's created, he's got a workbook that you can go through to go along with the book called True Wealth. That would be a great way to help you through some of this transition. And I think the end result of that are things like the statement of financial purpose, things like a clear set of goals and objectives that we've helped to identify.
Index number. What do you need to make?
Absolutely.
The one thing that I always find kind of interesting there is, and I think we talked about this too in one of the earlier episodes, but if you've been a saver all your life, you don't just wake up one day and say, today I am a spender.
Yep.
Actually, I had somebody like this, and I know she has a significant portfolio. She's been so disciplined in saving and has been so passionate about it. And she's living very comfortable. And she came in a couple weeks ago and she said, it's time. I'm going to start spending. Now, I'm not going to disclose her net worth, but it is significant. And she said, so brace yourself. And I'm thinking, oh boy, okay, I hope I plan for this right. She said, I need about $100 a month. I'm like, oh, really? I mean, that is so small of a percent. I don't even think that registers as a percent. It's like point something. But she felt good about it. She was going to start spending. It's like, so you don't wake up nor if you are a spender do you wake up and say, no, I'm a saver, especially at this stage of life. So
that's a big transition.
Going through and identifying who you are, what you're passionate about. And I think the same thing, if you haven't been, you talk about this, it's part of who you are. If you haven't been a volunteer person at other times of your life, showing up when somebody needs chairs set up an event or tear down, you don't all of a sudden get to retirement and say, I'm going to go park cars.
It's almost awkward at that time.
It is. So you got to have that conversation to really create what that picture looks like.
That's I think my biggest takeaway was when you talked about the importance of communicating with your spouse. And I think the blueprinting guide is a nice guide to that conversation, because those are a little bit awkward sometimes too, and it's hard to even process through what that actually looks like. The retire to something, not from something, is another. You talked about getting your ducks in a row. So I guess just are there other ducks, that people can do to.
I'm going to go back to something. I know I haven't shared this before. I used to in the workshops that I would teach that life is a puzzle, right? And I like watching my family do puzzles. I don't have the patience to do that. They find way too many pieces, and I just look like a total idiot when I'm sitting there, because I find one and it's like a celebratory moment. But when you go buy a puzzle, when you're going to put a puzzle together, very few people walk in, blindly just take a box off the shelf, throw it on the table, open it up, and then start putting it together. It's just not how you do it. And financial planning should be no different. You need to start with, whether you're in as a launcher or now as a leaper, you're coming back to the same thing. You start by looking at what's the picture look like? What do I want this to transpire? What's the finished product going to be like? Once you know that, then it's easy. Now you got to find the puzzle pieces. And again, nobody starts in the middle of the puzzle. Everybody, at least that I've ever watched with success. Is that how you do it, Nick?
I might.
I'm doing this wrong.
That's my problem.
Most people, you get the colors together, then you find the edge pieces, and that's all financial planning is. It's, what's my picture need to look like, and then what are my edge pieces? How much am I making? What am I spending? What can I put towards these? That's your corner pieces. It's much more rewarding and fulfilling when you get to the center pieces. The other is just what you have to do to make it work. But when you get to the middle stage, that's where you're all of a sudden, that's the builders. Now you're making really bigger progress towards a picture. And now, and again, your picture may change a little bit over the years, but it adjusts. I don't think it's a total makeover.
Right.
Kind of a
It's a
thing.
small shift as
shift.
opposed to a complete 180.
So if they haven't made that puzzle mindset, or we haven't talked to them when they were younger, now I'm doing the same thing. I'm going back to the same thing.
Right.
What does your puzzle need to look like?
And that's okay if you're 68 and you haven't put the edges together yet. Let us help you do that. It's not too late to actually, to do that. It'll bring you a lot of peace to start to see, oh, this is what I have. Because most of us, honestly, we have people walk through the door every day, new clients that need help. And I would say the number one thing that I see is they've got stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a mess.
It's no wonder they're anxious.
I would be anxious too, even if you're all right.
Yeah.
You're anxious because you don't know what you have and where it's at. And so putting it all together and bringing it into one plan where somebody knows what you have.
That's why
is
we
really
use the
important.
mantra, a life confidently enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because that you really can't have peace or joy until you have that ultimate confidence.
Right.
And it doesn't always come financially, but it is certainly a part of it.
Yep.
So one takeaway for the retirees at this point. Help me.
Yeah.
You share one, and I'll try to come up with one as well. So we're going to come up with three, one each.
Well, I guess I shared mine is communication with the spouse, getting on the same page with your spouse is key, because if you each have a different perception and you don't know,
I
if you
can write
haven't
these down.
Yeah.
if you haven't talked about it, then the odds of you being on the same page are slim.
Yep.
So you got
Yeah.
to have communication around it.
Ryan?
I think intentionally using money as a tool and starting to use those tools. You probably have more tools at this point than you had before. And so being intentional with how you use those to develop community, like Nick talked
And mine's
about.
kind of a building off of that time with spouse, but it's more what's my day going to be like? I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock and I did my normal things, and it's like, okay, I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah.
I never really stopped to think, if I wasn't doing that, what would the rest of the day do? So making sure you just made a list of these are my bucket lists, and then make sure, again, go back and share them with your spouse to make sure that you have the same bucket. And because otherwise, if I want to go on Viking cruises down the Nile River and she has no interest in that, that's not going to be so they go together.
I think from a practical standpoint too. So I guess I'm throwing one more in, but preparation is huge at this standpoint. You don't want to get to retirement and then feel like you have all these different pieces you have to put together. So making sure that you have the estate plan in place that you want. That should be a part of the communication that you have with your spouse. What do we want to do for the kids, if anything, grandkids, whatever that looks like. Make sure that those things are in place, so that when you get to retirement, you have freedom,
right?
And that regardless of what happens and what you do, everything's in place and ready to rock.
I've got one that's going to lead into the next phase, because it's you do start thinking about, okay, if life ended tomorrow, is everybody going to be okay?
Right.
Yeah.
And then you also start thinking about, have I appropriately prepared that next generation for receiving this inheritance?
Yeah, right.
So that's something else I think that we'll unpack with that legacy leaders group. We got a lot more to talk about, and I know we've gone a little bit more than our time here. So thank you for joining us on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast, as we laid a little bit more groundwork for what it means to be a leaper, age 60 to 75. It's an exciting period of time. I'm in it, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. Looking forward to still what's to be unpacked in this period of time. But if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, whatever medium you're doing, whether it's our YouTube channel or Apple iTunes or Spotify. There's plenty of them where you can go. Whatever their format is, make sure you like, follow, share. Send it to your friends. Make sure family members, coworkers. If you have questions that we haven't answered, or you have more specifics, make sure you send those to info@pinnaclewealth.com. You can address that to either Nick, Ryan, or myself. We're happy to reach out and answer those questions for you. Or if you have ideas for additional or future podcasts that you'd like us to make sure we address on issues that you're going through, send that to that info at Pinnacle Wealth as well. We want to expand the True Wealth nation, so to speak, because we're looking for people who really are interested in experiencing a life confidently enjoyed, one of true wealth. And why Pinnacle Wealth? Because the pinnacle of wealth is true wealth. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again at the next episode. The opinions voiced in today's True Wealth podcast with Kevin Engbers, Nik Aamlid, and Ryan Ovenden are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendation by any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing.